I almost wanted to say good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. The first edition was at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I got used to saying good morning when we had our modules. We will give Facebook and the live stream a minute or two to pick up. I can see that there is something not quite working with the streaming. So we need a minute or two. In the meantime, as it is our tradition, please let me know where you are joining us from. So I'm Sandra, I'm Austrian, and I'm currently sitting in Portugal. And this will be a good time to also check your if your chat works. So if you could please share where you're currently sitting, where you're joining us from, where you're originally from. Warsaw, Budapest, Hungary, Ukraine and Czech Republic, Warsaw. Okay. Milano, Poland, Cologne, Germany, Germany near Mannheim, Moldova, fantastic. Karen from Belgium. Frankfurt. Frankfurt in Germany, Azerbaijan and Poland. Born Portuguese, living in Germany, Italy, Venice area. Marcella from Colombia, living in Belgium. If you're watching on live stream, which I already got a sign that's currently working, use the comment section and let us also know where you're from. All the comments from Facebook Live are then copied onto the chat so I know what you're saying. Okay, good. So we have a big international crowd. I'm happy to see that. Some of you have already joined module 4, 3, or 2 from the second edition, from the first edition. Today we're starting the second edition module for module 1, second edition. For those who are completely new to the program, please do take notes. The presentation will not be made available. However, we are recording. It will be interactive with exercises, and if you have any questions, you can ask anytime. Use the chat on the Click Meeting platform, or use the comment section if you are joining us live on Facebook. After the webinar, for you to know, we have set up, in the course of the first edition, we have set up an open webinar participants group, one on LinkedIn, one on Facebook. I will share the links with you. Do request access, and Marcelina, the person behind the email address webinar@careerangels.eu, will verify your request and will add you. What has happened so far on the LinkedIn group, it doesn't seem that there is happening much, but actually there is. Members are contacting each other to help each other, to help in sourcing of companies, finding email addresses, getting recommendation, confirmation of skills on the LinkedIn profile, etc. So at first sight, I know it might not seem to be super active, but in the background, there's lots happening. So definitely I recommend to join that. Now, having mentioned Marcelina, so Marcelina is behind webinar@careerangels.eu, and at this point, I'd like to thank her for emailing every single person in a personalized manner. You might have realized we are not fans of automated emailings, and she has, in the last 4 weeks, sent and responded to over 1,000 emails. So thank you, Marcelina. So the second edition happens thanks to her. The second edition also happens thanks to my colleague Anna, who runs the Polish edition, which will now be happening on Thursdays at 10. So we have, because of the time zones, we have switched hours. And Anna has spent over 8 hours in the first edition across 4 webinars. At this point, I'd like also to thank the over 15 people who have donated more than 500 euro by PayPal. This is a crowdfunding initiative. And among others, thanks to those donations, we can have this second edition. And then I also have to say thanks to ClickMeeting, the platform we're currently using. When the coronavirus hit, they offered to support companies that are alleviating the effects of the coronavirus. So they have given us their tool for free of a value of 600 euros. So we can actually run those webinars for you free of charge. So thank you, ClickMeeting. And myself, for those who don't know me, my name is Sandra Bichl. I had a double career at the very beginning. 18 years ago, I was both in executive search, then worked in sales and marketing, went back to executive search, and then in 2010 I said, why not combine both and help candidates on the job market with marketing know-how and certain sales approaches on the job market. Since 2010, more than 5,000 people have used our services. We are not a headhunting firm. We actually support candidates, usually experienced managers and executive, in the career management and job search processes. What's important for you to know about the webinars and the methodology that we're sharing is that although the way most people describe it spontaneously, we managed to take a very fluffy HR topic and turn it into something very data and KPI driven. And the way we do it, from the very beginning, we started tracking and collecting data and starting tracking what works and what doesn't work on the job market so we can support our clients much more effectively. Now, what that means is that in more detail, we have collected reactions of more than 5,000 headhunters, the majority being based in all European countries, and almost 20,000 decision makers. So what does that mean? We are not sharing, and I'm not sharing in those webinars my own personal professional opinion, but I'm sharing the sum of reactions of approximately 25,000 people. And the sum of reactions means it's not their declaration, but the actual reactions. You will, one thing where we have a discrepancy between reaction and declaration is how many, especially in German-speaking market, how many recruiters that were brought up in the 90s insist on including birth of date, place of birth, marital status, number of kids to include it in the CV. So that's their declaration. But when they receive a CV that is well prepared and has all the elements that should be included in a CV, which we'll talk about in the second module, they still reacted and still invite those people to an interview. So we look at the actual reactions of what works and what doesn't work on the job market. Having said that, and I know you probably have a lot of people in your surroundings that are HR, recruiters, etc., that share advice, and I believe everybody who shares advice on career does so with their best intentions at heart. But what you need to remember as a person who is looking for a job, that the majority of advice comes from their own personal, professional opinion, experience, or even preference. There can be a personal preference for including a photo or not on the CV, etc. But one personal opinion doesn't represent the entire market, and it's not a statistical representation. So when you ask somebody for advice, a couple of tips: check their source of data. Make sure you ask at least 10 people from your target group. So when you want CV advice, okay, you can ask your colleague to proofread it, but your colleague is not your potential boss. The CV doesn't have to appeal to your peer. It has to appeal to who you're sending it to. And what's also important, and you will see that even today in the next 4 modules, data very often contradicts experience, even ours, and data surprises us. And here, I think the most important thing is to remember that the market is too dynamic to rely on past input and data. So now those webinars are happening because of COVID-19. Overnight, an employee market turned into an employer market, which means that there are more candidates than recruitment processes, which means looking for a job was already tricky. Now it has become even more so. We immediately prepared a job search and career management guide for professionals to know how to react, whether to err on the side of caution or not. And I checked, we're still the only career services / outplacement company that offers part of the services completely free of charge in the form of these webinars. And because we do that for free, we started crowdfunding on PayPal. I'll show you a link at the end of the webinar. We also have received a question during a couple of times during the first webinars, the first edition. Why do you do that for free? You could make lots of money of it. There are companies or freelancers that do webinars that are much shorter and they charge for it. So why do you give all of this away for free? To be honest, it's because it's the right thing to do and we want to help. So if we can help, why not do that? Good. Now, as some of you know who have joined the first modules in the first edition, I share always what's happening. And today I'm happy to be the bearer of good news. 2 weeks ago, I showed you a ray of hope. Today I can show you vast improvement on the job market. So here we see in week 13, we started tracking published job ads on LinkedIn. And published job ads on LinkedIn is a KPI that is definitely not perfect because the number of posted job ads on LinkedIn doesn't tell us, once there are changes in that, it doesn't tell us how many of those job ads have moved onto cheaper local job portals, etc. But it is it is a good signal of what is happening. Do companies want to save money? Are their recruitment processes on hold, etc.? So in week 13, once we realized that this is not a temporary situation, but a temporarily permanent situation, we started tracking that KPI. And you can see that over 8 weeks, LinkedIn has lost across 18 countries 864,437 job ads. That's minus 21%. However, for those who are joining us from Poland today, as you can see, Poland has actually, as the only country over those 8 weeks, has increased their number of job ads by 30,000. So that's an increase of 17% almost. So this is a really good sign. Here we have it sorted. We then, a couple of weeks later, among others, because we were asked by our clients and participants of the webinars, we extended our monitoring from 18 to 36 countries. Here you can also see the week by week, from week 20 to week 21 difference. We can actually see an increase of 11%, 11.79% across 36 countries, which is amazing. Here again, you have it sorted. And when we look at a 2-week difference, and I'll jump right ahead to the sorted, looking at a 2-week difference, it is a drop of 2%, but week by week we see an increase. And I do believe that this is already a sign that we're improving overall. Good. Having said that, the job search will still not be easy because there are many more competitors out there. And I've just communicated with one of the executive search consultants that I know. A lot of companies take the coronavirus as an pretext, excuse, source of initiative to conduct recruitment restructuring processes under that shield of the coronavirus, to exchange more expensive managers for cheaper managers, to look for a very specific set of skills. So although I've just showed you that it's getting better, from a candidate's perspective, it will still be tricky. So job search strategy. When looking for a job, we look at 4 steps. The first step is to define a goal, and it should be as precise and realistic as possible. And when times are uncertain, as they currently are, our recommendation is to take the path of the least resistance. What does that mean? Especially when recruiters, applicant tracking systems, HR is involved, they want to be able to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. What does that mean? So if a company looks for a very specific set of skills, competencies, experience, they can cherry pick their oranges, and there will be, because of the supply of candidates, they will not be willing to look at non-standard candidates. Non-standard candidates are candidates that are not, in the recruitment lingo, they are not plug and play. Plug and play means I take a candidate from one organization, put it into another, and within 2 days, they hit the ground running. With non-standard candidates, there is a higher risk of them not fitting to the organization, needing more onboarding time, more training and mentoring at the beginning. So here the trick is, when defining a goal and when defining your branding on the job market, to understand what is the goal. Do you need to look like an apple? Do you want to look like an orange? And if you are an actual apple, how do you get to at least pretend to be an orange to be invited to the recruitment process? Which brings me to branding and positioning. On a, let's call it, regular job market, you usually compete against approximately a talent pool of 1,000 candidates on LinkedIn. Currently, it will be more around 3,000 to 5,000 people. And I'll talk about that in a bit. Then the third step in the job search process, you need to make sure to have 2 CVs, one for the human, one for the applicant tracking system, and you have to make sure that the LinkedIn profile is also optimized for the human, for the recruiters, for the hiring managers, but also for the LinkedIn algorithm. And the fourth step is to use all job hunting channels that are available. And this brings me to my first question. And I'd like to ask these, to those who are familiar with the statistics, please don't answer. But to those for whom this is new, we track the efficiency of job hunting channels, and the job hunting channels are headhunters, so finding a job through recruitment companies. We have job ads, we have networking, and we have contacting your potential boss directly. Question to all of you: which one do you think is the most effective job search channel when looking for a job? So the 4 options were headhunter, job ads, applying directly to your boss, and the 4th was networking. What do you think? Networking, apply directly, networking, directly to the boss. Okay. So that is something where If you ask the majority of HR people, they will say it's definitely networking, then maybe executive search firms, and then job ads, maybe direct approach. There you will come across recruiters that will actually say, especially if you're an experienced manager or executive, they will say, oh, you shouldn't be contacting your direct boss directly. I mean, it's your brands. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. Now, when we look at the numbers and the data shows us something counterintuitive, the data shows a speculative introduction. Contacting your potential boss directly is the most effective job search channel, followed by networking, 29% as an average for the last 3 years. Executive search firms, those steadily losing ground over the last 3 years. At 15%, and job ads on average 10.33%, and here the majority coming from LinkedIn. Okay, so going back to our job search strategy, we today will be discussing how to define your job search goal precisely and realistically, and how to develop your unique selling proposition, how to make sure that the reader knows what you're good at and what potential added value you have to bring. In the second module, so next week at 2 p.m., we will be talking about CVs and how to optimize your LinkedIn profile. Module number 3 is about how to use all those 4 channels, and how you use them is very different depending on the channel. And module number 4 is about how to interview online and offline, with an emphasis on online. We'll be also speaking about how basic interviewing looks like, good interviewing, strategic interviewing with relationship building aspect. So this is a very profound module. If you can't wait 4 weeks and say, well, but I have an interview in 2 days, I recommend you watch the recording on our YouTube channel from the first edition. Okay, so realistic goal setting. When we look at how the job search process looks like, and to understand how long somebody will be looking for a job, we need to look at the complexity and consequently the duration of the job hunting process. Standard duration would be if you're looking for a job in line with your experience, competencies, and interests. A medium complexity and job search duration would be that you're looking for a job in line with your competencies outside your key industry. And difficult, you're looking for a job that is outside your core experience and industry. It's possible, but requires planning. Now, my recommendation, take quick notes on that, because I will be showing you real cases of candidates embarking on a job search process. And I need to be sure that we're on the same page when we say this is a standard job search process or a medium or difficult one. I want to make sure that we fine tune and really get on the same page. So, and I will be showing you soon a couple of scenarios, and I will be asking you the question, is it a standard, medium, or difficult job search process? And we will discuss why you're right or not right. So standard job search process in the past would take 3 to 4 months. Now it could take up to 6 months when looking for a job. A medium complexity in the past would take 4 to 6 months of systematic job search. Now I'd say it would be around 9 months. Difficult in the past, we would estimate, including the preparation time, to last 12 to 24 months. And I'd say with the coronavirus, that will still be the same. Good. Now, here we have a person who has a master in architecture. At the moment was studying executive MBA, had 5 years of experience as an architect, currently is an architect, and they want to be a startup consultant. What would you say? Is that a standard, medium, or difficult job search complexity? I can see some of you are already typing. Okay, so we're between difficult and medium. It's between, all of you, right? It's between medium and difficult. Why? We don't have enough information about that person yet, but somewhere between medium and difficult, definitely. Here, that candidate had a master in economy, business studies, had 20 years of experience, out of which 15 years in a corporation, 10 years at a C-level, 5 years, and then 5 years self-employed. That person is has been self-employed since 2015. And let's say because of the coronavirus, to say, I don't have enough clients, I don't have enough consulting projects, I need to go back to a corporation. I can see you already started answering the question that I haven't asked yet. Standard, medium, or difficult? Standard, 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 medium, medium, standard. Okay. There's one person who says hard. It is very difficult to rejoin the corporate world after having left it at a C-level. These are our most challenging projects from a career consultant position. There is something, and this has nothing to do with the actual competencies of the person, but there are some certain dynamics and invisible dynamics on the job market that prevent people from moving into certain directions, and I'll explain. So for example, in the legal field, if a lawyer has worked in an international law firm, they can continue or move to let's say, step down to a local law firm. And from a local law firm, they can go to an in-house position of a local company. And if they worked in an international law firm, they can go in-house to an international corporation. Now, if a local lawyer after 10 years wants to say, okay, I've worked in a local law firm, leading local law firm, I want to jump into the international law firm, that's not going to happen. So there are certain, you can always go, let's say, down, but not up. It's very hermetic. Same happens with people who left the corporate world, especially at a C-level. So somebody who they climbed the corporate ladder for 5 years. After 5 years, they joined the board, 10 years board level, then self-employed, tried different things, had their own company, did consulting projects. The corporate world, even though they might have those competencies, they are very, very reluctant to even interview candidates who have not been active in a corporation for that long of a time. So that will be very difficult. So there's a perception aspect. But what if we rephrase that and say the current role is, since 2015, they have successful project-based advisory to management boards. And the goal is to find a job in a corporation as an advisor or external consultant. Question, would that be standard, medium, or difficult? And now this becomes standard to medium, closer to medium, because it's still getting into a corporation. It will again still be tough. Good. Here we have a question. I'm 29. I was an entrepreneur for 5 years. I worked on a big risky project that nobody would touch related to events and branding. Can I go to a corporation or an advertising agency? I did bigger projects than the agency and had more responsibility, but I feel people fear me. They say I'm amazing, but not their fit. How can I fix it? Let's look at that. Miljana during Q&A, and you might find the answer in the course of the webinar. Let me just make a note so not to forget. Miljana, entrepreneur. So Miljana's question is, I'm an apple, but I want them to think I'm an orange so that they hire me. Okay. Entrepreneur agency. Okay. Here a comment, corporates have refactions since candidate worked 5 years non-corporate as self-employee. Sociologically, corporate people think that it might be difficult. Okay, yeah, exactly. So let's continue. Would that be standard, medium, or difficult? Somebody with a degree in psychology, 7 years with an HR department, currently HR business partner, goal HR business partner, HR manager. Standard, medium, or difficult? Okay. Some more say standard, 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 standard. Okay. Standard. What about marketing? MA in marketing, 11 years with marketing department, current role marketing manager, goal marketing manager, standard, medium, or difficult? And I can tell you it's a trick question. It is a trick question because with marketing, it is tricky. I would say it is medium or difficult. And we need to be more concrete when formulating the goal or the potential added value. There are a lot of marketing people, and in uncertain times, the first thing that are cut are the cost centers. Cost centers includes marketing. So if I say I'm a normal marketing manager with no special skills and I want to find a standard marketing manager role, it will be between medium and difficult because of the sheer amount of candidates on the job market. But if I say I'm a marketing manager and I'm looking for a job because I have those competencies, I know e-commerce, I know how to digitalize certain tools, I've done social media and all of these things with success, then we'll look at the standard to medium job search process. Okay, so summarizing, if your job search process has a difficult complexity, that would include change of industry. If you want to be promoted, for example, from a manager to board level, you want to change countries without prior experience or language skills. Medium, when there's high competition, or standard would mean plug and play. So you have the relevant skills, especially for 2020. So if you have experience in digitization, restructuring, change management, optimization, leadership, anything analytical IT tools. So this is how we'd divide up and summarize those levels. And as you already saw, sometimes by rephrasing the goal or rephrasing our own profiles, we went from difficult to medium or from medium to standard. In other words, how you position yourself and what you're able to prove is key. And here are a couple of recommendations, especially for those of you who are between medium and difficult, but it also applies to standard. And it already said in the slide, what you are able to prove. In other words, evidence is credibility. Just the fact that you think you can do something or you actually can do something doesn't mean that the other side, the person that assesses the documents, that assesses you as a candidate, will see that as well. So evidence is credibility, and what's important, part of the interview already happens on the screen. With hundreds of candidates applying to one job, under time pressure, the recruiter doesn't have time to start calling 200, 300, 400 candidates. So part of the interview actually does happen on the screen. So if of 400 candidates, I have 20 candidates that deliver on a silver platter all the information that I need with successes, with described projects, etc., they will go first with the obvious, easy candidates that are easy in a sense, obvious, easy, that at first sight have the skills that I'm looking for. So if you have the competencies, create the evidence. If you can't do it already based on your past experience, how do you do that? You can complete courses and get certificates, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, massive online open courses, Coursera, etc. Some of them are completely free of charge. Then, and I recommend everybody to do that, no matter how small or big your role, express your projects and successes tangibly year by year. I would recommend you to go really make a list of from 2020 back to 2014, 13, and ask yourself, what projects did I deliver? What were the business consequences? What were my successes, my team successes? What successes did I contribute to? Etc. Any questions to that? Those were very fast 36 minutes, so. Okay. I'll answer a question that, okay, a couple of people are typing a question. If somebody's on Facebook and wants to ask something, please do that in the comment section. I will answer a question that I haven't been asked. What about if we haven't worked for more than 2 or 3 months? So what if there is a sabbatical, a longer non-working situation? So if you haven't worked for, let's say, half a year or longer, make sure you definitely add courses, even if you start them just now in the last week or two. What the recruiter will want to know is, what have you been doing for half a year at home? Have you used it productively? Have you kept up with the changes in your industry, with the changes in your position, etc.? So if you have idle time for very different reasons, make sure you can show what you've been doing while, let's say, at home. Here a question, how can you position MBA students? Do they have some advantage in changing career industry? Good question. With MBA students, you do have a lot of MBA studies include doing a project with a company. So it is a good pretext to do your thesis with a company that you potentially will want to work for. Plus, now that companies can cherry pick their employees, I do believe that that candidates who have an MBA will be preferred over those who don't have an MBA. So it is, having a completed MBA is not, well, will soon be a rather must-have or a standard. What about hop in, hop out from one company to another, minimum accept? So here the question is, how long should I stay at a company so it's not hop on, hop off? Well, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering the question without more context. Let's look at that. Let's look at that question, hop on, hop off, in the context of what I'm about to show you. When setting your goal, and when, even if it wasn't your decision to change jobs, if somebody decided that for you, it is a good moment to reflect upon what you've done so far in your career and what to do next. And for that, there is career management theory and career management science. And I'd like to share with you how and why people manage their careers the way they do. About 40 years ago, a company called Decision Dynamics asked themselves exactly that. They said, well, how come that some people stay in their field forever, and they from the very beginning they want to be experts in the field. Then there are people who hop in and hop out from company to company, and then there are some that, while finishing their university, their degree, they already know that within 10 years or 15 years they want to be CEOs. Where does it come from? So they embarked on a big study that included 40 years of research and analyzing over 1 million careers. And this is the results. When we look at managing careers, we and the company Decision Dynamics realize that there are 4 patterns when managing one's career and 2 perspectives, so-called career concepts and career motives. And I'll explain. Career concept is the view of a successful career according to one's mind. It's the direction of movement and duration of stay in one field. In other words, this is what we actually do. So the expert pattern, there is little movements when it comes to changes, and ideally they want to stay in their professional field for life. So when meeting people, let's say at a party or a networking event, those are the ones who introduce themselves. Hi, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant. So their also identity is defined by who they are professionally. Then linear, the linear career pattern has upward movement. So something needs to improve. Better company, better title, better car, better salary. I want to go upward. And how long they stay in the professional field is indeterminate. Once there is an opportunity to move upward, they will do that. Spiral is a career pattern where change happens every 5 to 10 years to laterally related fields. Here I always mention my colleague Anna as an example. She studied psychology, then worked for 7 years at a recruitment company where I met her. Then she changed and she spent 7 years from HR senior specialist to HR director. And then she changed to career consulting. So you can see it's one field, recruiting, internal HR, career consultancy, and we're still broadly in the same area. And then we have transitory, changes happen every 2 to 4 years. And those changes go to something laterally unrelated. So this is a pattern without a pattern. And several years ago, somebody would have said, you shouldn't even call that a career. It is a mess. And when we look at the career motives, that's the underlying career motive according to one's heart, indicates the kind of career pattern that would bring the most personal satisfaction. So this is what we actually would love to be doing. Experts are driven by expertise and security. They're the ones who enjoy improving quality and working on professionalism. Linear, they are driven by power and achievement and hierarchy, remuneration, etc. Spiral is all about personal growth, creativity, team, working in a team, etc. Transitory enjoys variety and independence. They're mobile and they love networking, learn quickly, etc. Now, Vladislav asked the question, what about hop in, hop out? Hop in, hop out. Now, in our new vocabulary would be a transitory person. Now, what we also need to remember, and I'm sure when you heard now about this theory, some of you thought, oh, this is me. And when you heard, for example, hop on, hop off transitory, you all could have thought, oh my God, this is not serious. Or somebody who could have thought when hearing about expert and staying in a field for life, like, oh my God, this is so boring. So this hop on, hop off, or staying with a company for 10, 15, or 20 years, it is what you need to remember when you send somebody CV, when you are in an interviewing situation, it is possible that the person is, for example, has an expert pattern and interviews, well, an expert pattern wouldn't probably interview a transitory pattern, but it definitely would judge a transitory CV to say, oh my God, I don't even want to talk to this person. The moment I hire them, they will start looking for a job after 3 months. That's a waste of resources. So I think you get the idea here. Now I can see already some people typing. Gigi, I think it's Gigi, say, can you share the slides? Well, please do make notes. I did mention that at the beginning. Now, there is a test you can take. You can obviously do the thinking exercise and say, okay, where am I not? But if you take a test, you can see the results. And the results, and I'd like to discuss how the results look like, so it will be also easier for you to identify yourselves where you are at. So when we look at results, we see blue bars and red bars. The blue bars tell us the career concepts. What does my mind say? What have I been, what's the word? What have I been, let's say, trained or, see, I'm missing a word. What has society, my upbringing, etc. Yeah, exactly. What's expected of me. So what is the external factors? So blue bars are career concepts. So when I look at the blue bars here, this person's ideal career is a combination of primary and secondary. So this person thinks, okay, advancing is important, and while advancing to develop my competencies. So this combination would hint at probably general management. The career motives, the red bars, is what the heart says, and here in this example we have a perfect match. Now, and this is obviously ideally what we want to achieve. Now, question to all of you: how many % do you think have aligned mind and heart in their careers, career concepts and career motives? How many % do you think are aligned? 30%, 1%. Okay, it's not that bad. It's not 1%. 10%, 15%. Okay. The data says 36% are aligned, 64% are not aligned. 64% not aligned doesn't mean that 64% of all employees or people on the market, professionally active, are completely unhappy. It means that 64% of professionally active people could be happier. Now, and as Salvatore says and comments, there's still a lot of missed engagement. Absolutely, yes. I mean, imagine that you are in a company where 64% of engagement and performance is not fully used. It's such a waste. Waste of talent, potential, lost opportunities, etc. And I want to show you two examples of mismatch that are one very typical mismatch and one very common profile. So here the blue bars tell us this person wants to advance, they want to climb in the corporate ladder while extending their competencies. The red bars, the heart says, I want to be an expert. The heart says, when you look at the linear bar, I don't want to be promoted. I don't want to manage a team. And spiral and transitory is in sync. Now, question to you, and I'll be sure to be precise in my question. Imagine that this is the profile of, it could be a lawyer, it could be a programmer, it could be a technical person. And let's go with programmer. Let's assume that this is a programmer's profile. Their boss comes to the programmer and says, listen, you're programmer, you are our best programmer. We want to promote you to team leader. Question to you guys. Will this person accept the job offer? And do they want to accept the job offer? So you see, there are two different. Will they accept it? Do they want to accept it? Heart versus brain. Andre, okay, I see your question. Miliana, they will accept the job offer, but they will be unhappy, would accept it, but doesn't want to. Exactly, you get it. You absolutely get it. So this is exactly when our brain tells us this is the right thing to do, but it's not in line with the heart, because that person doesn't want to manage people. They actually much rather be sitting in front of their PC, programming beautiful code, writing beautiful code. It doesn't mean, because some of you jumped here to a quick conclusion, it doesn't mean that all of them will perform badly. You can learn to be a manager. There are certain rules and mechanisms and practices and habits, etc. It can even be that this person will be a good manager, but it's not something that will fulfill them deeply. And there was a question if you can take such a test online. Yes, you can, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. Here we have another profile, good news, bad news pattern. So here, the cure concept, the brain, the mind says, developing is important, and I want to develop my competencies broadly. And if after time I advance in my career, this is good. What does the heart say? The heart says, I want expertise and security. I want hierarchy. I want advancement. I want money. I want creativity, teamwork, personal development. I want to develop others. And I want transitory. I want independence and variety and networking and being mobile and learning quickly. Now, question to you, and I think this is working well with this group. How do you think does a person feel who wants everything? Milena says they are a student. You'd be surprised. We tested a lot of students. They don't have that. Not all of them have it. Agnes says they could be confused, unhappy. Unsatisfied. They can't decide. A lot of potential to be tapped. Don't know what they really want. Uncertain. They're enthusiastic. For a reason, this profile is called good news, bad news pattern. People with that pattern usually also have the competencies behind it. So they're those Renaissance people who are good at a little bit of everything. But bad news is, good news, they will be really good and find many different roles very interesting and will be enthusiastic about it. But bad news, sooner or later, they'll get bored because at least one or two of the elements will be missing. A standard corporate role usually is able to fulfill 2, maybe 3 of my needs, my heart needs, very rarely all 4. So question to all of you. Imagine this is a friend of yours who is not a student. Let's say they have worked 10, 15 years. And they have that profile. In the words of a client of mine, he said, Sandra, I need to talk to somebody. I have the feeling I'm standing not at a crossroads of my career. It's not left or right. I have the feeling I'm standing in front of a roundabout with 10 exits and I don't know which one to take. Question to you, what career advice would you give to such a person? What should they do if they are torn in so many different directions and they're actually good in so many different directions? What ideas do you have? And here I have, okay. And I'll say it right away. There are no right or wrong answers. There are a couple of different approaches towards that. Okay, Maxime says freelance or own business. Now, if somebody's a freelancer, and let's do this thinking exercise together. If you are a freelancer, let's call it a traditional freelancer, what do you think? What's the combination of patterns for freelancers? What do you think? So freelancers they want independence, so it has to be transitory, and they're usually good at one thing. So a traditional freelance would be expert and transitory, exactly. If I say have your own business, that could be linear and transitory, but then I'm missing expert and spiral. So freelance and own business usually combines two, not all four. There's one comment, take one randomly. Milan says, this is me, I don't have ideas, propose a new role. Consultant probably would be good. Consultant, if at a senior level with a good salary, then yes. So you see, this isn't so easy when we talk about career management and taking the next steps, especially if we want to do it strategically. And to make things even more complicated, we said we have the mind level, then the heart level, then we have the CV level, what somebody can actually see on the CV, and then we have the market, what the market wants. So once we put all those four layers together, it gets really complex. One, I think, person said it, but I'm not sure if that's what you meant. Propose a new role. When you see, because if you do have a job, change is not always the solution. When somebody tells us, okay, I want to change jobs, our first question is why? And sometimes it's really something is missing. So we call the job crafting to be able to go back and say, where is the discrepancy? What is missing? Are you managing people that you don't want to be managing? Maybe go back to your organization and say, listen, I don't want to be a manager anymore. Maybe it's that you need a little bit more variety. So maybe you can engage in different projects within your organization. So one solution here is definitely job crafting. The other one, a very common one, is to say, is a combination of job crafting. What can I get out of my job versus what can I make up for in my free time? For example, your organization doesn't allow to develop your expert competencies and live your expert pattern. Start an expert blog. Your organization doesn't allow for transitory, for variety, independence, and autonomy. Those are people who usually do lots of sports, traveling, art in their free time, or they do volunteering. So there are things that we can make up for outside our, let's say, job context. But it definitely makes sense to think about where you are at, where are potential areas of development, areas of frustration. And now you've seen that the majority does have primary and secondary preferences. So when you start combining those, we said expert and transitory, we can then deduce and say, oh, actually, you would be very happy in a freelance situation. Expert and spiral would be consultant, etc. So when we combine those, and I'll leave the slide up a little bit. When we combine those, we can then also deduce ideal career path. So expert linear, functional manager, expert spiral, general consultant, expert transitory freelancer, linear spiral, general management, linear transitory, independent business owner, spiral transitory, entrepreneur or intrapreneur. Here's a question. Why do recruiters consider it different to manage a group of 3 to 4 people from a group of 10 to 15 people? I don't know. I don't know. And here's a question. So when recruiters select candidates, and they do make a difference between candidates who have managed 3 to 4 people versus 10 to 15. Here a tip, and this is about positioning. If you have the feeling that the small amount of team members can be a problem when, or an exclusion factor when applying for a job, where the manager is supposed to manage 10 to 15 people, my recommendation, don't be precise in the CV and simply manage have managed a team or a team. And then once you're in the interviewing situation, make sure you have examples of how you manage people, give examples how you have managed people in matrix, projects where there were even 20 or more people involved, etc. So this is actually something that we can discuss in module 4, how to answer management questions. Okay, let's continue. Good. Any questions about those, the career management theory? Okay. All good, thank you. And I'd like to share now with you an exercise that helps people who have a good news, bad news background. And if you are suspicious that you might be, definitely pay attention, but it is also for those who have trouble deciding which way to go or how to define the criteria of the next job. When defining the goal, what we have observed in the last years is that must-have criteria are sometimes ignored for distracting nice-to-have criteria. So instead of focusing on what's truly really important in a job offer, candidates sometimes get distracted by the nice-to-haves as free apples at the reception, cards that you will never use, etc. So here, what's best is to design an objective decision matrix or evaluation tool for offers. So that when you actually, and this what I'll be explaining now will work for what should I do next. And it will also, if you know what to do next, but you receive 3 different offers, it will help you objectively assess which of those 3 offers is the best. Exactly. Good. So first step, make a list of 10 to 15 criteria or elements that are important to you in your next role. For example, that you don't want to be an expert anymore, you want to start managing people, or you want to finally be on the board. You want a good salary. You want to have a boss that manages by objectives, so gives latitude. You want to change industries. You want to have nice peers, and you want to commute 15 minutes, because why waste too much time and commute for an hour? So this is the first step. In other words, you prepare your ideal job ad that if you apply to, you would receive. Second step, define those criteria in more detail and add opposites to those points. So we then go back and say managerial role, what does that mean? Okay, minimum 3 people. The opposite would be stay in an expert role. Good salary versus what is the minimum or below what salary wouldn't you even consider working? Boss who manages by objective versus, for example, the opposite, micromanagement. Different industry versus staying in the same industry. Nice peers, opposite, not engaging average peers. 15 minutes commute versus the maximum that you say, okay, I could commute for 45 minutes. And my recommendation, really make sure you have a list of 10 to 15 criteria. Really say, I can define my ideal job. What else? For some, it's location. Defining your goal could include the size of a company, the type of a company, how big it is, the turnover, the types of problems they have, etc., etc. Now, in the third step, you then prepare a table for scoring. So you add them onto a table, and then you go one by one. So you ask yourself, and my recommendation is also not to do it on your own, but with somebody. You ask yourself a lot of questions in the following structure. Imagine you receive 2 offers that are identical and overall okay, but not wow. But they differ in the following. Offer A offers you the position of a manager, but at €2,500. Offer B pays €4,000, but it's an expert role. Which one do you choose? And then either you say, no, being a manager is more important than the money, or you say, no, 4,000 is better than 2,500. So you give a point to the option that you choose. And then you go back and you move to the next pair. Offer A offers you the position of a manager, but your boss is a micromanager. Offer B, you would have a manager who manages by objectives, but it would only be an expert role. Which one do you choose? And again, you score. Either you say, I want to be a manager so much that I don't care for the micromanager boss, or you say, no, I really rather have my freedom and be an expert for another 2 years. And you again do this. And you basically do that for the whole table. So you go 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 15, and then 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 2, 7, until the very, very end, where you have 13, 14, 15, 14, 15. So this is an exercise that can take between 1 and 2 hours if you do it properly. Step number 9, you then summarize which of the criteria actually won. So your objective must-haves. Usually when doing the exercise, you will come up with 3 to 5 must-have criteria, which means that once we have that, we can put the winning criteria onto another table and say, okay, it turns out that the 3 most important things currently are the type of boss, 15-minute commute, and to be a manager. And then when you have and here it's either the career paths or the actual offers, and you start grading. Okay, if I decide to take that offer, this is the boss, this is the commute time, this is the managerial role. Very important, before you start qualifying the objective must-haves, define what the scale from 1 to 10 actually means. So to say managerial role at 10 would be more than 10 people, and 9 would be 5 people, 8 would be so many people, etc. So very, very rarely do we really have 0, 1 or 1, 10 situations. So before you start qualifying, define what is a 10 boss, what is a 5 boss, what is a 1 boss, 15-minute commute is a 10, what is 20 minutes, what is 35 minutes. And and then start assessing. And you can do the same thing with the career path. So you can work backwards and say, okay, now that I know the 3 to 5 must-have criteria, which roles, positions, companies would give me what I currently need the most. So you can work backwards as well and deduce the next career path based on that as well. Step number 12, you then calculate and say so out of 30, here it would be 30 points. Option number 1 would receive 24 points, option number 2, 19. And our recommendation again is to consider offers starting at 75%. Having said that, it also indicates once you actually are in a offer received starting negotiation situation, it also shows you what's worth negotiating for. Did you say, well, you can go back and say, listen, I actually don't need those nice to haves, which have a certain value. Why don't we move those nice to haves, and why don't we can't I work from home 2 days per week, or could I increase the number in my team by another 2 people by the end of the year? So it also indicates what's worth negotiating for from your for your professional satisfaction. I hope that makes sense. So here again, just to summarize, nice to have distract often unnecessarily. You can focus on what's really actually important. It points out actual weaknesses of the offer. You know what to focus on when negotiating. You can direct your job search from the very beginning more precisely if you're clear on your must-haves. We do see that often candidates looking for a job that they think they want, but actually there are things that are much more important to them. Questions to that? Questions to the parameter bidding. Was I too fast? Was it too complicated? Very clear. Okay. I know that this exercise is very helpful, and we will make an exception for this module. You will receive the slides for the parameter bidding in case you want to do them at home afterwards. I know you could play the recording back and forth, but if you can actually print it out, I think that will be useful for you. Okay. Now, there's still sometimes doing different exercises and the test, etc., is not enough. So if you still need some more input, you can do more tests. Here, in order actually of cost, you can do additional tests. One is called 16 personalities based on MBTI. And it is 16personalities.com, where they divide your profile into 4, let's say, groups. There are the analysts, the diplomats, the sentinels, and the explorers. But why are we recommending that? Because it does recommend career paths and workplace, and it talks about workplace habits. There is some criticism about this test, so it's not 100% because it's not 100% reliable. The criticism says that depending on your mood on a given day, you might receive different test results. So here my recommendation: do the test on one day, then go back and do it 2 weeks later. What does change? There are no drastic changes. I'd say minimal changes. You usually stay within the same group. Elena says, I've done it 3 times and I always have the same results. Alina says, agree, I did it and I'm not completely confident about the results. I'm sharing this because it is a source of information. It can inspire you, but it is not black, white, 100% reliable. Okay, then you have the Clifton Strength, also known as the Gallup Strength Finder in the past. They examined 80,000 people, selected 34 talents, and they say that talents are created between the age of 3 and 15, and are then the 34 talents are distributed in 4 areas. One is relationship building, executing, influencing, and strategic thinking. And again, this is a source of information about yourselves. From the website, the top 5 Clifton strength, they cost $20 US. We don't get any money out of it. We recommend it because, for example, we use it in our own recruitment processes. You can also do the full version, and then you see the list of all the 34 talents, and it's $50 US. We work with the top five strength, and it's more than enough. Once you receive the top 5, also have a look at where your top 5 talents are located, if you're naturally inclined to strategic thinking, relationship building, execution, or if they're equally distributed across all 4 areas. And last but not least, the career view decision dynamics test, the career test. For everyone who has been with us in the previous modules, you know we don't do any selling. This is the only time when we will mention any tests. We have spoken to Decision Dynamics. They know that it's coronavirus times. So they have allowed us to purchase cheaper units from their system. So this is at cost. So usually to do a test, it will cost €221 for all attendees and your friends. Until the end of June, you can do the test for 79. It's €65 plus VAT. Then here's a question: are they US tests? Since it's a difference between the mindset, all those tests have been localized in terms of location, language, and also the pool of users. So they should have been adapted to every market. Okay, so now that we have spoken at length about how to define your goal, we also need to discuss how to talk about your unique selling proposition, how to brand yourself, how to position yourself as a candidate on the job market. When talking about the unique selling proposition, what's important is to remember that there is a difference between so-called long list arguments and short list arguments. Very often when we have our career consultations, we ask candidates / clients, first we ask them, okay, where do you want to work? And let's say they say, oh, I want to be a finance director for Coca-Cola. And then I say, okay, so why should Coca-Cola hire you? Well, I have experience in finance, I'm a good manager, and I'm loyal. And what's super important to understand for every single candidate, and this might be the most important thing that I will say during this entire webinar today. So there is a difference between long list arguments and short list arguments. The sample answer I just gave you is not the reason for why Coca-Cola should hire that specific candidate. It is a reason why they should be part of the recruitment process, but it's not a reason for why they should get hired. From a recruiter's perspective, there are different stages in delivering candidates. First, we have the briefing stage when they understand what is Coca-Cola looking for. Then we prepare a so-called target list, which is the number of companies where we will actively source candidates from, which then translates into the long list. The long list is a list of 30 to 50 candidates that fulfill basic requirements. In other words, we define the apple and we look for apples. And now the shortlist arguments is, why should I be hired? So why should they hire you? And here we need to be much more precise and understand, why am I different than the other 30 to 50 candidates on the long list? So from your own perspective, the thinking process should be here, okay, what long lists should I be on? What recruitment processes should I get invited to? And though that can be one homogeneous box, it could also be 2 or 3 different boxes. And then the second level thinking is, okay, now that I'm on the long list, why should I win? Why am I different, better, more unique than the others on the long list? Here an example. So interview asked the candidate, why should our company hire you? And the candidate says, because I'm reliable, a good manager, and loyal. I've kind of already given you the answer to that. This is a very common answer, even for experienced managers and executives. But it is the worst possible answer because the candidate uses descriptive adjectives. It's okay to use descriptive adjectives when you're a student with no experience or let's say 2 internships, but at a certain professional level, when being asked the question, when being asked, okay, so why are you different, unique, etc., don't give descriptive adjectives as an answer. So answer number 2 is the one I gave before, because I have more than 10 years of experience in finance, I'm a good manager, and I have experience working in international corporations. Now here, this is a standard answer given by most candidates. So probably 80% of candidates would answer that way. And as I said, this is why they qualify for the recruitment process, but not why they should get hired. Another way how you can imagine it, if you are a hiring manager, recruiter, anybody who asks those questions, now imagine you have 5 candidates and you ask 5 candidates, why should I hire you? And 4 of them give exactly that answer. And one says, well, and let's say answer number 3 is because I have co-authored and delivered 2 restructuring projects in the last 3 years. In every role in the last 7 years, I have been able to identify savings of up to €500,000, and I've been able to reduce unwanted rotation in the finance department from 23 to 0% within 6 months of taking over. Now, if I have 5 candidates where 4 give the standard answer and candidate number 5 gives a very concrete answer, which one do I go for? Of course, with answer number 3. It is the best possible answer that the fewest candidates give. It gives the executive search consultant or HR department arguments to put you forward on the shortlist, or even attach a recommendation for hiring you and not the other candidates. Now, what's important here, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not a recruiter anymore, giving a concrete answer, or the candidate with the best answer doesn't necessarily have to be the best candidate, if you know what I mean. So this is really about learning how to brand yourself, how to position yourself, how to stand out and make sure that you are in the selection process and you get a chance to get the job that you might be actually the best fit for. Okay. Here another example, marketing professional, interview to candidate, why should our company hire you? And the market serves because I have 7 years of experience in marketing. I have managed a small team of 2 people. I know digital marketing. Question to all of you here, how do we like that? What's missing? How would you like that answer of a candidate? And if somebody's on Facebook watching, feel free to participate as well. Not concrete enough, achievement is missing, results are missing evidence, examples, no real benefits. Okay. Agreed. I completely agree with you because I'm enthusiastic, creative, and I can work under stress. We already know that's not going to work. What about this one? Because I've worked on the digital marketing strategy, which has increased the sales volume by 30%. I have been part of the team that developed our social media presence on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I have personally managed our Insta account and have obtained our first 30,000 followers. Of course, we like that. And you can believe me or not, but we see those transformations from answer 1 or answer 2 to answer 3 within about 2 weeks of working with somebody. And those are exactly the same candidates, exactly the same competencies. We've just changed the communication, we've changed the packaging. So how you position yourself is so immensely important. So how do you arrive at the unique selling proposition? How do you come up with those answers? A couple of ideas. One I already mentioned, make a list of project successes, types of client, tools, language skills, countries, scope, number of team members, geographies, qualifications, volunteering experience, etc. So make a list of everything that can be expressed tangibly. You look for patterns when analyzing. This is also something, especially if somebody has been working for 10 to 15 years, there are a lot of things we do out of, I'll use the expression autopilot, without realizing, hey, actually, this is something I do differently than my colleagues. So I do recommend everyone to make a list of projects, make a list of successes, do some self-reflection and see, how am I doing something differently, better, more effectively? Where does that come from, etc. Another tip, and I'd recommend everyone to do that, research your competition. So let's say, okay, one of you decides, okay, I want the goal is marketing manager in Milan. Then go on LinkedIn and search from the recruiter's perspective, how many marketing managers are there in Milan? And you'll see it's probably several thousand, which is a very big pool. Then go back and say, okay, so maybe not marketing manager, what's the other keyword that I need? Maybe it's digital, maybe it's e-commerce, maybe it's Facebook or in something. When researching the combination of keywords that you want to be found with, click through the first 20, 30, 40 LinkedIn profiles and see who you are potentially competing against. So what kind of professional qualifications do they have, education, publication, and see, well, get inspired. Talk to somebody who knows you professionally. Current or former colleagues, mentors, direct bosses, get feedback and say, listen, I'm currently working on my CV. I'm trying to come up with my unique selling proposition. What would you say? How am I better, different? And get external input. You can ask a friendly recruiter, ideally not only one, but a couple. And either friendly recruiter means a recruiter that you already have a relationship with. If you don't, next time you have an interview with HR or a recruiter and they ask you at the very end of the interview, well, do you have any questions? You say, yes, I do. What's your impression of my profile? And ask for feedback. Well, do you see something that is different from my profile than a profile of people that you are usually interviewing? So make sure to make the most of conversations with HR and headhunters. Now, where do you use the unique selling proposition? It comes up at the beginning of the CV. So it's a profile summary on your CV, which we will talk about at length during the second module. And it is at the beginning of LinkedIn, the About session. You use the unique selling proposition when contacting headhunters, decision makers, and your network. Now, what might be good here also to mention, for some of you, you might not have one goal. When looking for a job, you might come up with two different goals. To say, I'll try two things at the same time, which means you need two different unique selling propositions, two different CVs. Now with LinkedIn, it gets tricky because you still need one LinkedIn profile that compromises and doesn't cannibalize both both goals. Okay, I do see a question, Vladislav. I'll answer that during the Q&A. You will also use the unique selling proposition during the interviews, especially at the beginning, and that's module 4. And final comments. If you have the feeling that you should be upskilling or reskilling, start immediately. For some, it means, in parentheses, to learn the computer, which is especially important for online interviews. From a former recruiter's perspective, but also seeing candidates interact with technology every single day, age is not what's when you were born. Age is seeing how challenging technology can be for somebody. I have clients who at over 50 are super fluent in digital and any IT tools we throw at them. And we have clients that are over 30 and they're like, oh no, but I don't know how to install something. So it's an attitude. So if you see that there's something to be done, definitely get familiar with the tools. And don't wait to say, well, I will learn it once I get hired. That doesn't work anymore. It might have worked a year ago, especially if you had a profile that was potentially attractive to employers, that they say, okay, we'll onboard you and you have half a year or 3 months to learn it. Right now, with more candidates available than actual recruitment processes, that thinking process will not work to say, I'll learn it once you hire me. So do the upskilling, reskilling immediately. As mentioned, familiarize yourself with the different IT tools, especially for the interviewing situations. Don't wait, don't delay. Remember, evidence is credibility. We've mentioned that already. And before we start the Q&A, and we have plenty of time for Q&A, which I'm very happy about. If you can think of friends, family members, colleagues, former colleagues, please do spread the word about our webinars. You can see how practical and concrete they are. If you want to keep up with what's going on the job market, you can follow our LinkedIn page on LinkedIn. You can follow us on LinkedIn, where we post currently almost daily. We have a blog. You can read the article, our guide on the job search in light of COVID-19. You can find free materials on Career Angels. One thing I mentioned at the beginning, and Marcelina will also be sending it out in the emails, request access either on LinkedIn and or Facebook to our group of participants. Here, the thinking is you're all in the same boat. Why not help each other? So, for example, if you need to improve your chances of being a recommended candidate by the LinkedIn algorithm, ask your fellow open webinar participants for endorsing a certain batch of skills and vice versa. This has been working very, very well in those groups. If you think that this was valuable, as I mentioned, we are crowdfunding. All our webinars are completely free of charge. If you want to contribute, please do so. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can like or follow our page on Facebook, LinkedIn, and you can engage with our content. And if you believe that this was very valuable, you can also ask 3 friends to do exactly the same. Currently, every like and share and engagement with our content helps us to spread the word and to be able to help more people. Good. And now we have, fortunately, enough time for Q&A. So if you have questions right now, please post them, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. We did have the question about, I've been an entrepreneur for 5 years, and now can I join an agency. So in other words, I'm an apple, but they are recruiting oranges. Is it even possible for me to pretend to be an orange? Yes, that's definitely possible. It's a matter of how you present your own experience, how you present your potential added value. For especially the non-standard, either executive level candidates or non-standard candidates, my recommendation is to also not only prepare a CV, but so-called business cases, business case portfolio or project portfolio, where you show what you have to bring, what you are able to bring to the table. So definitely possible, but it will require a little bit of more preparation. More questions are being typed up. If you are joining us on Facebook, feel free to ask questions in the comment section. Okay, I'm a non-standard candidate. I'm preparing business studies, but it's okay. That's a comment, not a question. Well, Miliana, if you need help with that, feel free to get in touch with me. Okay, you've been a very active group, but now in Q&A, I don't see too many questions coming up. In that case, I'll answer another question that wasn't asked. Some of you might be thinking, or it's comments we have received in the past, why do we spend so much time on defining the goal? Shouldn't I be sitting and sending out my CV? Do we really have to delay the job search process by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days? The answer is yes, because as you will see in the third module, what you prepare as, I mean, setting a goal is, and doing it precisely and defining the criteria is setting the basis actually for how your CV should look like and how to prepare a list of companies. If you don't do the thinking exercise up front, you will come up with a rather generic CV for rather generic companies, which means you will be a bland product on the job market. So doing that definitely is worth the time and the time investment. Okay, what about recommendation, impact, LinkedIn versus email reference and contact sharing? Could you be a little bit more specific? Do you mean in terms of efficiency or channel efficiency? I need more context here, Vladislav. How do you define goal for juniors? Since there's not that much of experience, it is more difficult to be selective. Okay, so how do you find a goal for a junior position? I would do it exactly the same, Maxime. I would start with asking, and this is actually something that everybody can do, irrespectively of junior or senior or somewhere in between. If you don't know what the next step should be, the immediate next role, you can ask yourself, okay, where do I see myself in 5 or 10 years? So what is the ultimate goal? And then work backwards and say, okay, now that I know that, what would need to be the next position to increase the chances of the ultimate, to be able to achieve the ultimate goal? So this is one way to go about it. Another thing what a junior could do is audit who you are. So make a list of your competencies, of your strength, your talents, and then again work backward and say, okay, having this combination of competencies and the 3 internships and that kind of education, who is most likely to hire somebody like me? Does that help, Maxime? Okay, so Vladislav said, in terms of the channel, what about recommendation impact on LinkedIn versus email reference and contact sharing? Okay, so I think what Vladislav is asking, how about what happens if you get in touch with somebody through LinkedIn versus by email? So here the recommendation, and we've done the test, email is more effective than getting in touch by through LinkedIn. Now, recommendations on LinkedIn, and this is in one of the modules on LinkedIn. So for the second module, in very short, because of GDPR and data protection laws, it is much more difficult to check references of a candidate nowadays. So recommendations and well-written recommendations on LinkedIn have now more weight, because sometimes it's the only source of recommendation a recruiter or hiring manager can get. Reference and contact sharing. So here I will now again assume something that's in the question. When getting in touch with your potential boss, does it help if there is a recommendation attached that you come from a network and not as a cold contact? Our data shows and observations that it is actually better to get in touch with somebody, with your potential boss directly without the network, and use your network as a source of information to prepare for the interview. You never know how well or not well positioned your contact is within the organization that you're applying to. Okay, next question. How can I get in touch with you for help? Write Marcelina and mention to Marcelina, and she'll introduce us. Carolina says, what if there are not so many successes, project numbers, achievements, even after several years of work? What if we don't know how to communicate what we possibly achieved? Okay, that's a good question. Usually, once we do a certain amount of thinking exercise, we are able to come up with tangible ways to describe something. The other day, I talked to somebody who had been working as an administrative specialist for 7 years. And he told me, well, but I mean, I just show up, make sure the products are there, I buy stuff, and that's it. And then when you go back, you challenge that and you say, okay, but what kind of stuff do you buy? What categories of procurement? Have you been able to negotiate better deals? Have you? And once we start challenging certain assumptions, we come up, okay, so I have negotiated new contracts with 7 suppliers. Sounds different than purchasing toilet paper. So especially for those who have been with an organization for a long time, have somebody challenge what's in your CV. So if your CV reads conducted recruitment processes, then you can go back, that person can say, okay, what kind of recruitment processes? For experts, blue collar and managerial positions. How many? Well, it's not that much, it's 1 per year. 1 per month. One per month is 12 per year. If you've been there for 5 years, it's 60. So completed 60 recruitment processes at 3 different levels. So have somebody who doesn't know what's in your experience and in your head ask you those challenging questions and detailing questions. I'm sure there's something you can come up with. Next question. How should LinkedIn look like if we have 2 CVs? Well, then the LinkedIn version has to be a compromise or very enigmatic to make sure that the 2 goals that you have, the 2 different CVs, don't cannibalize each other. So without more, this is a general comment I can make without knowing the details. Next question, what if a non-standard candidate who is trying to change fields is not invited to interviews after several applications? Is it something that an improved CV cover letter can help? Definitely, yes. Not getting interviews means usually that the recruiter who is recruiting for oranges thinks that you're an apple. So by repositioning you and rephrasing everything, you can definitely increase the chances of being invited. Having said that, because maybe you noticed, maybe not, it says after several applications. Here again, I would then have a follow-up question, say how many? Because on today's job market, sending 20 CVs is almost like sending no CV. So we need to look at volume, and here the rule is and I need to be precise, depending on the industry and your level of experience, for every 30 to 40 headhunters and 60 to 90 companies that you contact and apply to, you should have a response rate of 30 to 50% and an interview rate of 5 to 10%. So to finish replying to Magda's question, maybe your application documents are fine. Maybe you don't have the necessary volume yet. Here, without seeing it, I can't reply. Again, my recommendation: get in touch with Marcelina and ask the question. We'll might be able to help you with that. Karen says, great webinar, thank you. I'm 27 and have several years of management experience, where communication and problem solving are the main competencies, but across different industries. For almost every application, I get far in the recruitment process, but then often get the reply that my profile doesn't fit the position. The recruiter almost always seems convinced, plus I always pass several interview rounds, but the management tells that my profile doesn't fit the position. How to fill this gap? Here again, I would need a little bit more information. I would have to actually see your CV and also see the job description. Oh, this is Hendrik on Karen's account. Okay, Hendrik, so this is you. Hendrik on Karen's account. If you already know that management sees you as a two non-standard candidates, you need to make sure, my recommendation would be to in the CV and in the interview to brand yourself as a more traditional candidate. I hope that makes sense. So instead of being an apple with 3 different colors or 4 different colors, be an apple with 1 or 2 colors. So yeah, if you already know that here's a misalignment, try to be more more standard. In other words, we now have a common vocabulary. So most probably your CV is standard spiral, and the people deciding whether to hire you or not are expert linear. So in other words, you spiral linear have to look like expert linear. Your spiral transitory CV and personality, etc., would need to look like more expert linear. Having said that, question, how happy would you be as probably a spiral transitory? How happy would you be in an organization that is very opposite to you? So again, maybe it's a matter of readjusting the goal or adapting slightly your profile so they see what they want to see. Okay, next question. I am a non-standard candidate. I have a degree in journalism and communication and now working for 2 years in a corporation, legal sector. It is very difficult to move to another corporation, even another sector, as I think my degree does not reflect business knowledge I gained and skills I have. Can my degree be a problem? Can I reach out to you for help? Thank you for the great training. You're very welcome. Looking at the data, and please don't quote me on that, I would have to go back, but more than 60 or 70% of working people do not work in their area of studies. So the degree is usually not a problem. However, if you feel that there's something missing, go on Coursera, go on Udemy and make up for what you think is missing. Coursera is a brilliant platform where you can have, you have usually 3 to 6 months courses with projects and students, and you have a certificate, for example, in business, digital transformation, etc. So there are two things. So one, what you believe that is missing, and the other, so it's definitely, well, maybe not definitely, but it's probably not a degree thing. It's more what you believe, maybe from your own know-how, what's missing. But the degree or the type of degree shouldn't be here a problem. Next question, is it a good time now to apply for international opportunities with regards to the COVID situation? Definitely apply. I do recommend everyone to apply. Time will tell. We have a pretty good insight onto what's going on the job market, and there are, let's say, 3 types of corporations when it comes to international opportunities. One type of organizations that say, it doesn't matter where you are, we will onboard you, you can join us, even if we have never met you in person, that's fine, we'll figure it out, and you then move or whatever in 3 to 6, 9 months, 12 months, and they onboard everybody virtually, irrespectively of anything, of the geography. So there's a group of companies that continues recruiting. The second group of companies, the more traditional ones, so probably more expert linear, they say we need to meet all our candidates in person. And they do start the recruitment processes online, but they then delay the final decisions until they can meet the candidates in person. And then there is the group in between. They haven't figured it out. They are still experimenting. Maybe they hire part of the people without meeting them, and with part of the roles they'll wait. So there's a question mark. So is it a good time? Yes and no. For some, it might be an opportunity. Give it a try. Next question. Okay, Karen commented, how do you adjust your CV in order to pass automatic CV sorting software to get that CV grounded? Vladislav, I invite you to join module 2 next week, and I'll explain exactly step by step how to do that. And you will, after the webinar, you will get a step-by-step guide on how to do that on your own at home. Okay, any other questions? We still have a couple of minutes. While I think we have one last question, out of pure curiosity, how did you find out about today's webinar? Just out of curiosity, through a friend? Okay, there's more. Do many companies in Europe use automatic CV analysis software? Magda asked. Magda, I'd say it's not even a matter of Europe. It's a matter of big corporations, especially if they have some ties to the US. In the US, it's now more than 90% of the Fortune 500 companies that use ATS, applicant tracking systems. In Europe, it's more and more, especially with the big corporation. It's definitely very common. Okay, friend LinkedIn, mom, mom Karen, that's nice. Network, Facebook, nice refresher. Okay, from a colleague. Carolina has one more question. I have a question about LinkedIn profile. I have deleted my 1.5-year traveling gap from my profile. Would you say it's for the best? Carolina, here my follow-up question would be, when was that gap? Was it 5 years ago? Is it currently? Does your LinkedIn profile stop abruptly? So again, I need a little bit more information. Will you upload this module to YouTube? Yes, we will. Carolina, have you worked since? Okay. Traveling gaps on LinkedIn, not everybody understands it yet, especially if they have very low transitory awareness. So probably it's for the best to keep it deleted, unless there is a good story behind it and something that you can then transport into your profile summary, etc. But unless you have a good story and it's part of your branding, then keep it deleted. So what will happen today after the webinar? Marcelina will reach out to you with links to materials, links to prepare for the second module if you plan on joining the second module. I do highly recommend joining the second module because we'll show you the differences, and I have to say very surprising differences between CVs for humans, CVs for the applicant tracking system, which we spent about 2 months testing various applicant tracking systems, and I have to say it's surprising how easy it is to crack them. And yeah, so definitely worth checking in. We'll also show you tips and tricks on how to get around, or to use the LinkedIn algorithm to your advantage. So definitely makes sense to join next session. Yeah, and if you need anything, any links, contact info, etc., ask Marcelina, and she will then recommend you or point you in the right direction. Javier says, I got here through my sister. You helped her. Oh, that's very sweet. Please say hi to her. Okay, so thank you very much for joining today. I'll see you next week, and please come back with friends and family and colleagues and former colleagues, and have a good week. Bye. Hi, thank you for watching our material. If you found it interesting and you'd like to see more, subscribe below. If you do not want to watch recordings but actually want to join live, find us on Facebook. See you next time.